The United Nations has called for candidates worthy of obtaining the job of advisor, countries who are capable of handling responsible international involvement. But what makes a country eligible for this slot? In the words of Bob Goshen, leaders should influence others in such a way that builds people up, encourages and edifies them, so that they can duplicate this attitude in others. As such, the ones successful in this task are who prompt others to follow in their footsteps for the sake of preserving humanity. Throughout the 20th century, Canada has engaged in events worldwide that can act as guidelines to other countries towards becoming a more internationally aware and involved country. With a history to support the purpose, Canada should be given the position of the UN advisor to maintain responsible international involvement. If the goal of the United Nations is to promote worldwide peace, then its advisor should have the same influence to do so as well. The Normandy invasion, or D-Day, of 1944 is an example that shows allegiance Canada had with the Allies during World War II. Canadian troops were given the task to seize Juno, one of 5 major beaches in the region, alongside British and American forces who captured the other 4. Together they continued to push back the remaining German forces through France, who were in constant retreat afterwards, indicating their impending defeat and the end of the war in Europe. Canada's effort was evident through their victory alongside the Allies in D-Day, and without relying on one another to complete the job, collaborating with other nations would have been a challenge. Canada also portrayed this during the Suez Crisis when Egyptian President Gamal Nasser claimed the Suez Canal for his country from France and Britain. Egypt was supported by the Soviet Union, so France and Britain reacted by siding with Israel to attack the country, and through NATO, the United States would declare war if the USSR attacked them. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lester Pearson, suggested that the United Nations set a force to uphold peace throughout Egypt, while the two opposing forces arrange a deal. With this new idea of peacekeeping a success, it is clear evidence that Canada seeks alternative ways to maintain peace between nations, and that violence is not always the answer. Now with a reputation as an international peacekeeper, Canada is appropriate for the job of advisor. The Korean War of 1950 to 1953 was another event that showed Canada's ability to come to peaceful conclusions. Under the command of the United States, Canada and 32 other countries were sent to defend South Korea from the Communist North and push back the invaders to the border. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lester Pearson, asked to remain from further advancing into North Korean territory after emerging victorious in their mission. Pearson's decision to ceasefire proved to be the smarter decision at the time, as the United States proceeded to push forward only to be cornered where they had started. Pearson's intentions behind his actions were to protect Canadian lives, but by doing so, he is indirectly sparing the lives of many North Koreans by further provoking them. This event reveals Canada's power to come to decisions that would benefit the country and the lives of many others, something a mentor must be able to undertake. For the position of UN advisor, the candidate must also involve itself with different countries in terms of cooperation and aid. In the past century, Canada has collaborated closely with many nations in hopes to bring justice to those in most need of it. The Rwanda genocide was a devastating event in which Canada failed to protect the dwindling Tutsi tribe from the systematic killings of the Hutus. Canadian General Romeo Dallaire foresaw the upcoming genocide and requested for 2,000 more peacekeepers along with the 3,000 to further defend the Tutsis. Due to the disinterest of the United Nations, only 500 were sent, and Dallaire was forced to watch the genocide play out right before his eyes. Despite the fact that the mission was a failure, the loyalty Dallaire and his troops have for Rwanda did not waver. Canada did not stand by and tried to halt the injustice towards the Tutsis, something that the United States did not consider. Canada's debatable actions alongside the UN and NATO during the civil war in Yugoslavia are another event to regard to. High tensions between the different republics of the nation resulted into ethnic conflict in which the United Nations reacted by sending peacekeepers, including Canada, to the area but were unable to take charge of the situation. NATO warned that action would be taken to cease the fighting, and in 1998, when the Serbians captured most of Kosovo and massacred tens of thousands of Kosovars, the NATO alliance set their very first attack on an independent country in motion. Some considered Canada's participation with NATO against Yugoslavia as controversial, since it interfered with the domestic affairs of an autonomous nation. However, the same attack led into the liberation of many Kosovars from the Serbians, and even with the failure of the United Nations to uphold the peace, Canada freed Kosovo and served justice to the Kosovars who needed it the most. Canada displayed engagement among other countries in a series of different events throughout the 20th century. They successfully brought peace, exhibited good moral judgment for the lives on the line, and brought justice upon the ones in dire need of it, all while cooperating alongside many diverse nations. Based on these factors, Canada is in the best position for becoming the UN advisor, since other nations can look back on the country's accomplishments and defeats to learn and progress from them. As such, assigning the position to Canada based on our past involvements would allow the title of peacekeeper to be shared among other nations, promoting the purpose of the UN and taking one more step towards the envisioned world of peace.